Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'm really excited to have Keegan Reid with us, the founder of Understanding Sasquatch. Now, Keegan has a really unique approach to researching and communicating with these incredible beings, and he very much takes the spiritual approach rather than they're not just a bunch of hairy apes running around in the woods. In the beginning, when I first connected with Keegan, it was actually centered around light language. Now, Keegan also is a light language speaking starseed. And I found it really interesting that he actually uses his light language to communicate on different levels with these beings. He's an extremely spiritual and sensitive person, so it's very easy for him to sense when they're around and communications like that type of thing. But what I found very fascinating was indeed the unique approach that he has towards them. Now, Keegan, when you started really getting into this whole Sasquatch thing, in a very briefly, what was the first experience that you had that really made you want to research them and understand them for what they truly are as far as being very spiritually advanced beings?
Well, my first day was a very spiritual experience. It was in December of 2015. And I had, Bigfoot was not on my radar. It was not really an interest of mine. I have a past of having some pretty advanced kind of spiritual experiences in my youth and through my life. Had 2 near-death experiences. I was looking into some of the information on Bigfoot only because my wife and I watched a documentary called Not Your Typical Bigfoot Movie, and we just kind of laughed about it. It was not anything that I took serious. I thought it was just kind of funny, the story about Dallas and Wayne, and we found ourselves just kind of quoting lines from that documentary, just having fun. Then it kind of snuck in on me some memories that I had from my youth where I saw about a 24 or 25-inch print in Independence, Kansas, walking down what is called the One Way, which is in the Riverside Park and Zoo. There's a river called the Verdigris River, which there are many known sightings of the forest people along the Verdigris River. I lived right on the Oklahoma border of southeast Kansas. I don't remember anybody ever talking about Bigfoot when I was growing up. I don't remember even having a conversation about it. I do remember seeing the Rogers and Patterson, the Patterson-Gimlin film.
There you go.
And seeing Patty. I had an unusual experience about the age of 4 years old. I lived on Circle Drive in Independence, Kansas at the time. I was about 4 years old, I'm guessing, between 3 and 5. And I was playing in the dirt in the front yard. My mother was probably in the house cleaning the house or whatever it is that she did as a routine. And my dad was not home. I remember that. And I was just playing in the dirt. My friend Timmy is usually who I played with, my next door neighbor. He was my age approximately. We'd usually play like hot cars outside in the dirt and stuff. And I had an overwhelming experience for about 4 or 5 minutes that I had like the most powerful waves of love sweep over me. I think to this day, with all of the experiences that I've had, it's still the most profound experience of my life.
Give me chills, yeah.
And apparently, from what I recall at this age, being 44 years old now, 40 years later, I remember a communication that was in there that felt something like, God loves you, and we are going to protect you all of your life. I get goosebumps. The only way I can describe the experience was really what I said. It was like waves of love that swept around and through my body. It was the most loving, peaceful, comforting feeling that you could even just, in the most vast aspect of your imagination, could comprehend. I don't know if that was God at that time or angels, or now I understand a little bit more about the forest people. I think it may have been somehow God and the forest people and angels all communicating with me at that particular moment or those minutes. And then it just left. It was just like they wanted me to know that they loved me and that they were watching over me and protecting me. And I never really connected the dots. I did talk about this experience with almost everybody I know, I think, growing up, including my parents, my brother. I only have one older brother. He's 5 years older than me. And never really connected any dots with it. I saw this print when I was around 11 to 13 years old, and I thought it was a hoax. I didn't think there was such a thing as a Bigfoot. I thought somebody was hiding in some bushes somewhere waiting to have a laugh at my expense. So I just continued on my walk and never really reflected back on it. I may have talked about that experience with a few people, but it's only come up in my radar in the past 24 months. My first experience was after quitting drinking. I gave up alcohol about 2 years ago. This was about 6 months after I completely had given up alcohol and resigned it from my life. I was having some panic attacks and anxiety attacks. It's something that's fairly common that runs on my mother's, well, I guess on both my parents' sides of the family. I have some cousins on both sides that deal with this, including my mother. She deals with it also. So I thought that alcohol was the reason for the panic attacks and anxiety attacks, so that's why I gave it up. I didn't want to die. I wasn't ready to die.
Yeah, right.
I'm okay with dying. I just wasn't ready to die then. And so that was kind of the beginning of my spiritual journey. Again, I went to Bible college around my early 20s, which is a pretty conservative approach to spirituality. I went to Bible college in Tulsa, Oklahoma at Victory Bible Institute, which is a charismatic Bible college. Pastor Billy Joe Doherty was the pastor that was head of that school at the time. I found him to be a completely amazing man with perfect integrity, nearly. I mean, if it wasn't perfect,
Wow.
it was very close to it.
Wow, very rare.
The guy was the real deal. And I also was an intern when I was in Bible college for a very spiritual man. And his name is Keith Wheeler. Carries the cross all over the world and tells people about Jesus. You can find his website at www.kw.org. To me, he has been one of the greatest spiritual inspirations of my life, because Keith is absolutely the real deal and one of the most amazing, sincere human beings that I've ever been in the presence of to this day. After quitting drinking for about 6 months, and I had kind of abandoned I went to Bible college. I thought maybe I would become a preacher. I went there after a young divorce. And my mother had encouraged me to go, and I always listen to my mother. It's always wise to listen to your mom. And so I went, and I had to sign a contract that said more or less, you're not going to drink alcohol, and you're not going to have sex, and you're not going to masturbate, and all kinds of stuff. It was a pretty intense contract. And I was like, if I'm going to do this, I'm down with all of it. I will commit to this. And I made like a 3.9 or 4.0 my first semester. I only went for one semester. And part of the reason that I stopped going was because I saw some hypocrisy among some of the student body and some of the teachers. Now, I'm not talking about Keith or Pastor Billy Joe Doherty. They were spotless in my eyes. But I just decided that because of the hypocrisy that I had seen, I felt like I was still vulnerable at that age, and I was not capable of staying on the kind of path where I would be responsible for others' spirituality. So I did not want to accept the mantle of being a preacher. Although I've always known, and my mother has always said, that I was designed to have a spiritual path in this life. And when I was, I don't know, some years back, I was dating a girl that had very strong psychic abilities. I mean, she was full-blown psychic. And she said, "You have the priest archetype over your life." And I was like, well, I like to play Dungeons and Dragons, and I like to play a cleric when I play, you know.
Yeah, right.
I just didn't really take it that serious. And I kind of started having some pretty profound spiritual experiences again about 10 years ago. And I wasn't necessarily living like the most profound spiritual life at that time. I was just a busy working man. I developed a wholesale vitamin company that ended up making multiple millions of dollars with me and one other business partner. And I brought another friend into the business, and he went on to, I think he's head of like Google sales team now. So he's a big shot now. And my other friend, I think he more or less got wealthy from the work that I did with him. And I ended up getting the short end of the stick. So I'm the broke dude kind of hanging out in the wind. And I'm not really broke, but I just kind of stepped away from that entrepreneurship path. I wanted something deeper and richer, something more meaningful in my life, and that's kind of where I've been since I quit drinking. That really has kind of resonated in the forefront of my mind. I don't chase after money. I'm not chasing after any kind of big career or anything like that. In fact,
Fame or any of that, yeah.
I just want to pursue my interests, and right now my interests really revolve around the forest people, and now I'm gaining other spiritual interests as well. But about 6 months after I quit drinking, I was riding with my friend who had taken on the role of my sponsor in Alcoholics Anonymous. He lives in my hometown, and he's a retired professor of law from the University of South Dakota, a very intelligent, articulate gentleman that I now consider a family member. But at the time, he was my friend, and he gave very sound spiritual direction. And I was riding out with him, and, you know, this guy is like really conservative Catholic. And we were driving out to his property in the country. I thought that I had seen tree structures on his property as 50 acres here. I said, his name's Roger. And I said, "Roger, can I ask you a question? This is going to really seem out there, but I want to ask you, do you think that Bigfoot's real?" And he kind of looked at me, and we looked at each other, and he said, "Yeah, I do. I really do." And I was blown away by that answer. And told me that he used to read Fate magazine when he was a kid. And he was interested in it, but it wasn't like his main focus or anything. You know, he's just interested in it. As most people are, they dabble in things that they're interested in. And I said, "I think I saw some tree structures on your property. It was in December. It was cold. I don't know if there was snow on the ground or not. I can't remember now. I don't think so. It was just cold." I said, "Do you mind if I walk around on your property and take a look and see if there's any signs that may be indicative of the forest people activity on your property?" Keep in mind, this is in the northwest part of Arkansas, in the Arkansas Ozarks. He said, "Sure, Keegan, you're welcome to do whatever you want, whenever you want. We love having you here." I said, "Thank you." And I went out and I started knocking on trees. And next thing I knew, I had to return knocks, and then they got closer and louder. And then eventually I had 2 knocks that were so loud it sounded like lightning struck. Running out of the woods with fear because I didn't understand what was going on. So that was my first experience. Does that answer your question?
It sure does. Well, it's kind of funny because I've had experiences throughout my life where I think it starts off with many of us we get that feeling that we're being watched. And like I've been very open and sensitive my entire life. So when I was a kid, I would be if I felt somebody's intent, I could feel them. I could turn and look at that person, and I would actually get images of what their intent was. So when I would be in the woods, my mother would take my 2 older sisters and I up to this place called the Taconic Crest Trail. It's a trail that goes along the far left border of Massachusetts and New York State. And it's a really very thick area up there. But I would always have that feeling of being watched when I got to this certain area. And I remember being a little boy I must have been 7 years old, and it was in the wintertime, so it was like 6 o'clock at night. It was very dark out, and I was playing on the snowbank, and I got that feeling that I'm being watched from down below in the backyard, and it was very, very strong. And so it kind of freaked me out as a kid, and I went inside, and I never forgot that. It always stuck, that there was a communication there, a telepathic communication, but I didn't understand it for what it was at the time. And so years go on. I had several other experiences where I've been very, very close to them, and I've always believed that these beings are much more than mainstream society wants to. Most people don't believe they're real at all. And I came to understand that they are very spiritual, extremely telepathic, highly, highly spiritual beings. And it's a completely different take on what they are, who they are, and why they're here. So when I started looking into some of your work, and we started having a couple conversations here and there, over Messenger and things like that, I was like, wow, this is a really unique way of looking at these beings. And it's not you're not out there just to get a footprint. You're not out there to just take pictures of tree structures and so forth. Is you're making contact with them, and you're making contact on a much higher level. And that's what really drew me in, because it's very unique in your field. And then when I found out that you actually speak light language as well, near and dear to myself, I was like, wow, how are you using this? And I remember that conversation we had. I said, are you speaking to the Sasquatch people with light language? You go, well, I did a little bit, but I wasn't sure. And I was just like, you have to, And then I remember getting a message back. It was maybe a couple months later, and you'd had a couple really good outings. And that's when you started posting photographs of like the symbols that they had been leaving you on. Now, am I correct that you have a particular place called the gifting tree?
Yeah, it's a gifting stump.
Okay, it's a stump. Over here, I was guided. I'm up at the East Eddy Ranch, and I was guided by a juvenile Bigfoot. His name is Delaki, and he brought me to the gifting stone. And I have a lot of telepathy with them, and these telepathic communications are constant. They're extremely active around here. And I remember the first couple nights of being here, they would be very, very subtle, like tapping on the window, which is 7.5, 8 feet off the ground. I mean, one of us would have to get on a ladder to tap on that window, and I'd fall asleep, tap, 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 wake me up, fall back asleep, tap, 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 playing games to let me know that they're there. But I always felt that presence. And they're extremely active when it comes to, if you show them interest, they're going to show the interest back to you, and you show that your intent, and like your intent is to, well, number one, you've come to understand their true nature. You want to talk about that for a minute, what you actually know them to be?
Now, a lot of people probably are not going to be, well, I'm just going to say it. I went down looking into ancient traditions and ancient esoteric and occult writings. I went into Hindu traditions. I went into Tibetan traditions. I looked into many different forms of shamanism. And I found that there were some consistencies. And I also found out that the oldest religion on the planet of the Earth, which some would argue would be Jainism. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly because I've never been around any Jains. So it apparently was a worship of forest spirits. And when I was looking into ancient Tibetan writings and Hindu writings, it was said that Buddha himself was a yaksha. I was like, what in the world is a yaksha? I had heard Yeti. I had never heard yaksha. This is growing up in southeast Kansas, and living in the United States of America, we don't talk about yakshas.
Right.
We don't talk about Yeti too much here. So what I discovered was the yakshas have connections like Hanuman, Lord Kubera. Sri Lanka has a lot of tradition with the yakshas. In fact, I think some of the earliest yaksha stories, if you will, or legends, come from Sri Lanka. And I do think that Hanuman is somehow connected to forest people. And I also think that the yaksha traditions are actually there, that those traditions of yakshas and yakshashas or yakshishis, depending upon whether it's Hindu or Buddhist or yakas. There's a lot of different words for yakshas. Some people may have heard of rakashas, I think is another one. But there are a lot of different kind of variations of these particular beings. And what they are considered to be semi-divine beings. And I've even seen translation where they are considered to be guardian angels.
Mm-hmm.
That is maybe one of the factors of why this is so poo-pooed, because with conservative spiritual traditions such as like Christianity, which I am a Christian, in my paradigm of my life, Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. He is my divine connection to the eternal heavenly realms. And it's through what he did for me that I will spend eternity with him, wherever it is that he has us go, which, is that place called heaven. And I'm looking forward to that. And so I was a little apprehensive when I kind of found this information out. I was kind of like, wow, this went from looking for these hairy guys out in the woods to, being a people, to this is something a little deeper. And I think that there are a lot of tricksters. I think that there's a lot of stuff out there where people have experiences that are non-corporeal that may not be the forest people themselves.
Sure.
What I have found, what is associated with them is the tree structures, the stick glyphs, the orange orbs specifically. They do have eye shine, but I've only seen it once, and I saw orange and blue. It was on one night, only one time in almost 2 years. So for me, it's not been frequent. I have not seen them in corporeal form yet. They've shown me footprints in dirt that I prepared for them to put a footprint down for me.
Nice.
Because the terrain is the terroir is very rocky here. It is not conducive to muddy footprints as it is in other parts of the United States of America and other places around the world. But they did. I set it up. Sure enough, next day I went back. The first time they showed me like a 9-inch print. It was about 4.5, 5 inches wide. Not as much of very little arch to the foot. There might have been some. I think I've said in the past that there was none. There might have been a little, but it was not like how our prints are with a lot of arch in them. Right. For most people, unless you're flat-footed. The next day I saw another print that was about 16 inches long after I saw the baby one or the young one or juvenile one. And the thing was, when I went back to see the juvenile print the following day, I had been in the woods singing the only songs that I could think of top of my head, like Amazing Grace. And I remember I was singing an Amy Grant song with my YouTube app going on my iPhone, El Shaddai. And when I went back the next day to look at that print that was like 9 inches long, there were pieces of bark that I'd never seen before that had, I should have kept a piece of the bark. I thought it was like common bark, but it was bark that had like a red fur on the inside of it, a red stringy type fur. And it was almost used like a brush to wipe the print away. But what they had done is they had taken 2 sticks that they had broken on both ends of the sticks, and they had placed it perfectly into what would appear to be a Christian cross. They had laid it exactly in the angle and the placement of where that print was previous day. That was fairly profound.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was an acknowledgement of my own spiritual path or that they were in alignment with that, because
Let me ask you something about that. When you found that, I mean, you're very, very sensitive. What was the feeling that you had from that? Because I know that you're highly telepathic as well. Very much like many of us that really work on our gifts understand this and have accepted it. We're beyond the is it real when we go straight to let's communicate and let's get on with the juice of this matter here. And when you were seeing the cross that they had left for you and they had processed the print and they prepared that so it would really make a little more of an impact on you had they just said it in the print itself. What was the feeling that you had? I mean, was it emotional? Did you feel any messages that came through, or what do you remember about that?
I felt a divine connection to my creator. And I also felt almost a family connection.
Wow.
With the forest people. It made me reflect back on my life. It made me reflect back on the experiences that I had when I was younger. And I had a couple of, more than a couple, really crazy experiences after that experience. If I would have told myself these same stories just over 2 years ago, I don't know that I would have believed them.
You're right. That the story that you told me where they were tossing the little pieces of bark and things like that. I'm just going to recap the story very quickly. But the story that Keegan told me was he was in the woods and there were these tiny little, or not necessarily tiny, but pieces of bark that were being tossed from all around, but not touching him. And it was quite obvious that he was surrounded by several of the forest people. And none of them were touching him until the very end when this one particular stick, which had significance, and I'll let Keegan talk about that. Actually, I believe it touched your foot or something like that. But I said, where were these pieces of bark coming from? And you said, from another dimension. Now, the other night, I had driven a friend to the airport. I got back here, and if anybody's been up to this part of Washington, we're at the base of Mount Adams. When the wind gets blowing up here, it will roar for days on end up here. It's just really, really powerful. And it was one of those nights, and it must have been 9 o'clock at night, and I walked out on the property, and I just felt a tremendous rush of energy. And I mean, we're here at a Stargate, and there are vortexes all over the place, so that the energy is extremely accessible. So I started, as always, I speak to the spirits and all the other beings. I speak in light language because it's more of a direct line of communication to them rather than speak through the ego. I bypass it. And that's what we've all come to know light language is really great for, is communicating from soul to soul. And so I went into somewhat of a channel of a higher aspect of myself, and I went into this. It was a kind of if anybody knows what a haka is, it's a native New Zealand. It's a dance, but it's a blessing and a warning altogether. If you come in peace, we welcome you with open arms. If you come to harm us, we will fight you to our last breath, type of thing. And it had a lot of symbolism in it, and I was channeling that aspect of myself. Must have been about 4 minutes long. When I stopped, I was out towards the field, out past the medicine wheel, and I was out on the walk of intent. At that instant, when I came out, I realized there were 3 of them around me. Dalaki was one of them. He was off to my left, and he was in the trees. And now I wasn't able to see them, but I could certainly feel them. There were 2 off to the, maybe one directly out to my right and one farther up to my right a little ways. And they were just pouring so much energy into me. And I had telepathic communication with them to where it's like, all right, if you guys all jump out right now, you're going to scare the hell out of me. So can you help me work with my fear and get over this? And we were showing each other images, and it was hilarious. And Dalaki was giving me the wood knocks, and then I would stand there. There's a tree, and all of a sudden the tree would start shaking, and one of them would be moving the tree. And I walked a little farther, and then there was an area where there was at least 5 of them around me. I think it was 5 indeed. And the energy that was just pouring through me, my entire body was vibrating, and I kept right at that moment. And because, well, you know as well as I do, is that they can teleport and they can pop into a certain part of this dimension, pop over to another spot instantly, or whatever they want to do. And I kept thinking of that story that you told me, that they were in another dimension and they were all around me. And we exchanged a lot of telepathy, but I was singing to them because they loved the whole flow of it, and I was singing in light language. And I mean, I can go on with a lot of other details about the story, but that was the thing that really I was like, I gotta get Keegan on here and do this interview, because that has been stuck in my claw the whole time. I was like, when he had that experience about them tossing the little pieces of bark and sticks at you, you know, and I kept hearing you say, I go, where did that come? Where were they? In another dimension. And that kept showing to, you know, that little phrase in our conversation kept showing itself to me, you know, for probably 4 or 5 minutes during that whole encounter that I had. I walked back up, and I was very, very thankful that they had shown me, you know, that much of themselves, and they had given me that much love. And when I walked back, I'd gone back to bed, and I could hear Dalaki speaking in his kind of inhaling speech, that some kind of type of thing. And I could hear him speaking out loud. And I'm like, I really, you know, you guys are awesome. Thank you so much for helping me work out my fear. And I was just incredibly grateful to them. And it was just, it's a lot of fun when you're connecting with them. And so the next thing that came to mind was there's a post that you put up. I think you did it on Facebook, where there's a stick and a symbol on that symbol, or on the stick. Now, a lot of people in our Unity Light Activation group, they not only do they speak light language, but they sign, they sing, they do art, and so forth. And a lot of these symbols that these people are writing, I see, it's like, that's the same symbol, one of the same symbols that I see these people writing. These are interdimensional galactic languages. And the Sasquatch people are using those symbols to communicate with you. So it was like, all right, I got all these things I got to talk to Keegan about, because number one, we have the whole the multidimensional aspects of them, and then their humor. They're so much fun. They're wise guys. They just love to joke and play little tricks and things like that. But it's all done with such love. And then the symbolism, every time I see that it's somewhat kind of like a question mark ask, but not really that one. If I remember the symbol that you had on the stick, that was you. Now, did you leave the stick and then they put the symbol on that, or did they give you the stick with the symbol on it?
It's happened both ways.
Oh, okay. So it's happened multiple times. So now when I see these symbols, I see a lot of coding. Like we call them light codes because we need a name for them. But what are they? It's an interdimensional form of communication, and it's my dear star brother Nakoma has this beautiful statement: "As one small phrase of light language can contain an entire library's worth of information." Well, that symbol can do exactly the same thing. So when you started receiving these symbols from them, what was the main significance that you perceived from that communication? And tell us a little bit about that.
At first, I thought it was just play. And I thought an X was a symbol that you can easily make with a couple of sticks and just kind of X marks the spot. Hey, I was here. You were here. Hey. Later on, I started to discover multiple symbols and more intricacies. And so I instantly reverted to looking into the Chinese symbol structure of like Mandarin. And I thought that might be a key, but I sensed somewhat changed my direction on that. Because I started putting out some Chinese, symbols with sticks and seeing what they would do with them, and they did change them around. As some people would say, well, that was just animals walking across them.
Sure.
In some cases, it very well probably was. In other cases, I feel very certain that it was not. Just due to the complexity of the changes that took place, they would actually leave additional symbols. So no animal walking through would leave additional symbols. Hey, I'm a deer, I'm walking through. By the way, here's another extra couple of stick glyphs for you. Yeah, I don't think that was raccoons either.
Sure.
So what I have kind of discovered is that the next evolution of thought went to like Futhark, Norse, Scandinavian runes. And some of them I have found some correlation with the Futhark runes. But I just kind of made another light bulb went off recently that I believe that some of these runes may be connected with the ancient Tibetan symbols and their language. And I have not got a chance to explore that yet, but that's where my current mindset is with them. Now, as far as the purpose of them, they put an X by the corner of my house where my bedroom is, on the closest place where I sleep to the edge of the house. They've done that. They've put sticks in my yard. I was leaving a Y stick out whenever I found a tree structure or something that I thought that they made, and that was my calling card. And then that experience that I had where like probably 300 to 600 little pieces of stuff fell out of the air on a non-windy day all around me for approximately 3 to 5 minutes. Again, this time frame of 3 to 5 minutes, which is similar to what happened to me when I was a little boy. I kept looking up. I was sitting below a tree, but there was absolutely nothing in the tree. The tree was not dead, but it was barren. So it just made no sense where these things were coming from. The last thing, and none of them were touching me, but they were landing all around me very close in a very rapid procession of tap, 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 tap. That's how fast these things were landing around me. And they were little bits of bark and branch, and I could see them landing on the dead leaves around me. They were bouncing. I mean, what was going on? They had just been around me doing rock clacking, and they even like slapped something really loud not that far from me, letting me know that they're around. But a little 2-inch Y stick, which I've kept, and I keep it actually close to my bedside to this day. It landed on my shoe. It was the only thing that touched me, and immediately when that touched me, it stopped. Now, the other thing that was that experience alone was a life-changing experience. And I had an experience where I was leaving food in a basket. Now, I found that wicker baskets is an excellent device to use for exchange of gifts with them, because it is something that I think they sort of have been accustomed to in the past.
Okay.
So what had happened was I had bought like a cheap little Easter basket at like Aldi's grocery store for like $2 or $1 or something. And I was using that to leave my gifts in. I was kind of hanging it on the top of this gift stump and this branch that I had kind of sticking out of it that had a Y on the top. And I would hang this branch about 10 feet in the air, so it would at least make it difficult for the possums and raccoons and squirrels and stuff. Make it a little bit more of a challenge for them to get to it. Well, I was pulling up to the location. I could see the gift stump from where I drive up, and it takes me only about 60 seconds to walk down to it. And I had placed about a 3-pound rock in the basket so that wind would not blow it off the Y of the branch. And when I went down to the gift stump, my basket was broken. The handle was broken. And I was disappointed because I had to work my fat body down into this ravine to reacquire the basket and then take it home to fix it. And I think I was chastising them a little bit, like, Dadgummit. I didn't say dadgummit. And so I was going down and get the basket, and I just got up to the gift shop and I just said, would you guys please not do this again? Because if you put the basket down the ravine, I'm not going to get it next time. But I'm going to take it home. I'm going to repair it, and I'm going to bring you gifts again tomorrow. And I love you. And so that's what I did. I went back the next day to take the basket back, and the most amazing thing happened. There was a pile of very intricate sticks laid just below where the basket would have hung. And it was made out of 40 to 50 sticks. And it was about 4 levels in height. And I took pictures of it. To this day, it is still one of the most profound things that I've ever seen. And I believe that it was an apology.
Wow.
So I think that there's a lot of things that take place with these communications of sticks. It's a relay of feelings. It's a relay of significance. It's a relay of camaraderie. It's a relay of many of these things. So that's kind of what I've gotten from it. I do look forward to exploring like the Tibetan symbols and stuff like that and see, where that goes. So I probably should mention one other experience that I had that was like in the top 5 experiences that I've experienced with them. In the first 6 months of exploring, getting to know them, leaving apples and pears and bananas and crackers and whatever on the gift stump, and just trying to learn from scratch on my own. There's about a city block and a half of overhang caves that are about 15, on average 10 to 15 feet deep. There are 2 old ancient rock walls built in these caves, and an old Native American Indian body was recovered in these at one point, and it's pretty amazing. But I didn't have the nerve to go down to these caves because I just had a real strong feeling that they were down there. And I wasn't sure that I was prepared to see them. But after about 6 months, I thought, you know what? I'm just going to do it. So I just kind of spoke out loud, guys, I'm going to be coming down to the caves today. I hope that I'm not intruding on you, but I would like to meet you. And I've heard them knock from down there in reply. I've heard them bang rocks and stuff down there. So I was like, I'm just going to do this, man. I'm just going to do it. So I just slowly started walking down there. And I think this particular day I was frustrated that I was so many months into this and I had not seen them yet in corporeal form. And so I was a little frustrated. I was a little bit angry. I think I was, trying to justify spending so much time doing this. So I just said, would you please just let me know that you're here today? Absolutely. So I can just have peace of mind that I'm not wasting my time. Sure enough, immediately when I had that thought, and I'm not sure that I maybe didn't verbalize it also vocally, but I didn't vocalize it loud. It would be just like I'm talking to you right now if I did. And a rock came rolling out of the cave down in front of me, a softball, and it rolled out about 30 to 40 feet. I mean, it rolled. This was bowled out of the end of the cave. Icicles hanging over the front of it. There was about a foot clearance, and it's probably about a 9 or 10 foot tall overhang cave entrance, but it runs along, like it was about a half a block long. Okay? And so I went, wow, what was that? Did that actually fall down from above the cave? And I just saw it wrong. As soon as I had a questionable thought, another one rolled out about 15 feet closer to me, about the size of a soccer ball, but it was pretty rectangular in shape, and it tumbled out about 15 times. O'clock in the afternoon, I'm there by myself. I was really happy that they did that, but it scared the hell out of me. Mm-hmm. And I just told them I love them. I said, I love you. Thank you so much. I'm going to go home now. And I did. And so those are some of my experiences, and they're just amazing. They're amazing. I don't have all the answers. Yeah. Can't even absolutely guarantee that I've been interacting with the forest people. I can't absolutely guarantee it. I had an orange orb show up in my backyard that just kind of was moving. It was doing like a scanning pattern. And then it kind of just started coming toward me. And I was like, whoa. And it stopped in the middle of like the air up in my neighbor's yard across from my yard. It just stopped. And the next thing I know, I got an impression in my mind that was, we are here for your benefit. That was it. That was all of the entirety of the message that I felt like I got. And I just stood there looking at it for another 3 to 4 or 5 minutes. And I didn't know what else to do. It was just like, it was there. I was there. I'm like, what next? Is the ship going to come down and pick me up or what? I wasn't prepared for that. So I was like, I'm going to go inside now. So that was that experience. I know that my friend, and I call her my spirit sister, Kat Hansen, she's talked a lot about the spiritual aspects of the forest people. And there are a lot of people out there that are having these very spiritual experiences. And I just want to say again, that she feels like they more like to communicate with us in physical form more than in non-physical form, usually. My experiences have been very kind of spiritual in nature. So have I been dealing with a trickster? I don't know. Am I dealing with my own consciousness from an exterior perspective, going in and out and coming back to me? I don't know. Is it fae? I'm not absolutely certain. I do know that I would not be looking into the forest people if I did not have a strong draw to them. And so in my heart, I feel like it's them, but I am a little disappointed that it's not been more corporeal and that it has been so spiritual in nature. And I think that there are some people out there right now that are talking about, going out in the woods, laying on a cot, staying out all night long, letting them come up and touch you, and there is some concern that some of these experiences may not actually be the forest people. Now, I'm not saying that they're malevolent experiences. I'm just saying that if they're corporeal experiences, which is what Kat said, that in majority of her experiences, they're very corporeal. Now, she is a medicine woman. She also happens to be a Christian. This is kind of the quagmire that I'm at right now. How much of their experience is spiritual? How much of their experience is corporeal? The Native American legends say that they exist in this world and another dimension. All the Yaksha traditions state the same thing, that they are multi-dimensional beings that can probably traverse the entire cosmogony of our universe. This is my belief system. So I'm hoping that in the next couple of years, I'll get more clarity on that. I'm hoping that later this year, I'll actually get to meet them in corporeal form, because I am going to go spend a week with Kat and meet the family that she has been interacting with since she was a little girl. There are 9 to 14 of them in variation to that number. And they have said they want to meet me. So I'm going to go meet them. And I can't wait to hold their hand. I can't wait to feel them in a physical sense and tell them that I love them and tell them that I thank them for coming into my life. I'm looking forward to that experience. But I'm hoping in the next couple of years, I'll be able to talk about this in a more absolute sense, and that I can say, yeah, I've absolutely been around them in physical form, and I'll have more knowledge to share with people, and I'll be more than happy to share that when that time comes.
I happen to agree with that that point of view, that they are multidimensional in nature, which allows them to project into the physicality here as well. I've seen there was a black one that I later found out was a female, and her name is Ida. James, who's been here on the ranch for 30 plus years, he wasn't aware of her presence. So I don't know if she's come here recently or if she's been here all along. James doesn't know, but he wasn't aware of her. We were actually using the divining table to get a little, to try and verify, exactly who was I seeing, who was I communicating with. But I always feel telepathy prior to any physicality. Now, she's the only one that I have seen with my eyes, my physical eyes here. I've seen glimpses I'll see movement. Dalaki, he's kind of like a blondish tan color. When Barry Littleton was here, he had interactions with an older one that was white. And Barry asked, "What should I call you?" He says, "You can refer to me as Elder." And then, of course, Dalaki, who is the adolescent, he's the teenager who likes to get in trouble, and he's down here all the time, and he shows himself. But then when I saw Ida, it was dusk, and I'm walking by this back part of the ranch, and I just look off to the right, and I get that I'm being watched feeling again. And that's just them projecting their consciousness to you. Hey, by the way, I'm over here. And so
Yeah.
I see the dark figure, and I spoke light language to her. And then when I stopped, I took a couple steps, came back, and she was gone that very instant. So it was pretty interesting that that she gave me a little flash of what she looks like, but she was still, and of course, here's another thing that has kind of reminded me of something that you told me. I said, well, was the young one big or whatever? You're like, well, they're all big, and they are. The small ones are huge, and like Dalaki, he being a young one, he's still well over 7 feet tall. And you see these beings, but what I've come to through, and I've had many experiences as well, probably not as many as you, but I've come to understand that, again, they're extremely spiritual. And like when I started speaking light language, it's a much higher form of communication and much closer to what they're used to doing. So when we do speak and express from these multidimensional angles or perspectives, that it's a lot easier for them to communicate with us rather than to try and go through the English language or whatever, three-dimensional language that we have. I asked you, I said, how was it going when you started speaking your light language? Now, let's just touch on your light language for a little bit. How long have you been speaking, and how do you use that to interact with them now?
I think I started speaking in tongues when I was around 18 or 19 years old, and it was in association with, it was post-Bible college. I was thinking about, again, being a preacher, and I was working with Gary Close at the Word of Faith Church in Coffeyville, Kansas. And he was like a really big mentor to me at my young age, and he's a wonderful human being and a great pastor. And he was the one that kind of opened me up to speaking in tongues and the light language, or glossolalia, or whatever you want to call it. And it came very naturally to me. It took me a while to break through initially because I wasn't prepared to trust it, and he helped me to kind of embrace the trust and just let go. I also watched a documentary called Humano on Netflix recently, and the Peruvian shaman called it Icaro, Icaro, and he kind of described it as the language of the astral realm. And he kind of asked the guy, they were around a fire, and he said, "Do you think the fire can understand us?" And the guy that was on the spiritual journey with the shaman said, "I don't think so." He said, "You're right. It does not understand Spanish." And he said, "But if you speak from your heart, you speak the language of the astral realm, of the earth." And he said, "The fire will understand you." So they kind of danced around this fire, and they were speaking the light language, and that was just another situation where light language made sense to me. And I don't have any adverse reaction to light language. I remember talking with Keith Wheeler about it, who was a guy that I really looked up to when I was in Bible college. He's like, "I'm not sold on light language, Keegan." And that was not a stumbling block for me. Not everybody's in that phase of their spirituality, and not everybody feels resonance with it. Not everybody connects with it. Some of us do, and some of us don't. And I think it's okay for both.
Right.
Now, I did want to mention, you've mentioned a couple of names that have come up for me that have been significant. And one is Elah. And she goes by Elah, but her name is Ilane. Ilane. I just want you to see if that might be who is out there, because she might be interacting with you and with me. And the other name that you mentioned, Dalaki, there is one that has reached out to me. He's a brother of a chieftain by the name of Kika Tai Mai. And his name is Tonaki. Tonaki. And I'm wondering if that might be Tonaki. So just a curiosity. And there's been another guide that's come out for me. You know, Sunbow speaks with Camus, and I feel pretty comfortable with Camus. And also Musan is apparently one of my guides. He also goes by Marcin Tuk. And then there is another one that is like a chieftain type, and he goes by Waste Seiya. Waste Seiya. And he's like a big dude. He's like Chewbacca big dude. And now again, I've not seen any of these individuals in corporeal form, but I feel a pretty strong resonance with those names, and I've connected with them, and I feel good with them. There's another female that's like a shaman type, and her name is My Way. So those are just a few names that I found.
Let me give you a couple names and see if they resonate with you. My first guide in that form was Satawak.
That sounds like one that would be from this terrestrial realm.
And then Anakwe.
That would be another one that sounds like it would be from this terrestrial realm.
Now, this is interesting. There was a gentleman here that does he studies ancient languages, and he is a Bigfoot researcher. And one thing that was interesting is he said the word Laki, I can't remember, it's very ancient, actually means messenger, and D is the. So in that particular language, Dalaki translates to the messenger. So that was a kind of I mean, he's mentioned that to me a couple times, and he mentioned it to someone else last night. And but
you know, one may be feminine and one may be masculine too, like Elah. And if you think about it, Elohim.
Right.
There is a lot of derivatives of the ancient Hebrew languages and of the ancient Babylonian languages, and a lot of the ancient Tibetan languages. There's a lot of feeling and sound from the Native American languages, but you get into the names that sound like they come from a science fiction story from outer space. That means that most likely it's not that they don't exist or that's BS. It's that they may be coming from a completely different dimensional place. So if you ever hear a name that sounds like it came straight out of Star Wars, it doesn't mean that it's BS.
Right.
It just means that they may not be terrestrial. So I wanted to point that out to people.
I agree. Now, what's interesting too about using light language is because there's a lot of different aspects of it, and yes, each of the body chakras has the sacred sounds and tones that are hidden within these languages. But when we start to use them in the aspect of communicating with the higher dimensionals, such as the Sasquatch people and then other beings as well, we find that when people will listen to, say, anyone that speaks light language, a commonality I see here is, wait a minute, it sounds like this language and it sounds like a little bit of that. Like I'll speak a little bit here to demonstrate, where some people may sound, well, it sounds like Hebrew, but it also sounds like a little bit of French, and it sounds like, and of course these languages, my answer to that usually is, where do you think those languages came from? Let's think about that, right? But I'll say something in light language, and if you wouldn't mind responding in light language, and we can kind of demonstrate the different tones and the core of the languages and the names that we're talking about. So I'll start with Beatotaya Katatisha se edoa in the Naika. Elodukisha bidi la Hahia Wazawa in the Dukwafwapwe, La Hanan the Dukacha Jese, I Aloa Atikud the Markati, Wahelo the Gidameshese, Sashaqua ala the Dukwa, Makwa Ada, Yakia Nanakiache, Beto Tukwa Voya, Yahianan Quatiti, La Tia to Dukwa, Lepwache.
Jiwa sendu kaparintu tu chucho maika tutura sa ki I ucha I neku uncha apuka I cho dar uti sha ju ta shu me I kuta I uku a u I tai I ma I nyuka I
Lit me up. When I hear you respond, I hear a lot of different things. I hear the sound, the percussive nature of it, and I look at those because as the speaker, it helps us through the percussiveness, stimulate the roof of the mouth, back of the throat, in turn, pineal stimulation, and we all know what happens when that happens. But the other thing is I feel your intent more than anything, and in the intent from a higher perspective as opposed to the three-dimensionality that we're speaking from right now. And so the nature of your light language, it feels very very ancient, number one. It has many hidden tones, sacred tones within that. And then I have this Native American, a lot of people will say that about certain dialects that I speak. It sounds very much Native American. And I think that the Native American languages on a whole, very, that their origins are very ancient indeed. So that when I hear you speaking your tongue, your dialect, it feels, well, being a multidimensional language, I can actually feel that multidimensionality to it. It's not, it's bypassing intellect and ego, but I felt it right here. And I had a few visions, and the visions were nature. The visions were harmony and a beautiful breeze, the whole serenity and truth of the heart of the forest and the people that are there. That's what I really got from when I heard you speak.
Before I started to speak, I envisioned myself in the woods with them.
Mm-hmm.
And I envisioned Wastesea and Musan, Ila around me. And I imagined them placing their hands in my hands. And I look up to them and I go, okay. And they're like, it's okay. This is okay. Just let it flow through you. And so I feel like they were helping me with that one. So I feel like that was genuinely them reaching out. Maybe someone will have heard this and they'll be able to give an interpretation on what they felt like that was, or it just may be an activation for others that will open up their spiritual path a little bit more. Mm-hmm. But either way, it definitely came from my heart. I could feel it real strong in my chest. I got kind of a warm, goosebumpy feeling all around here, and I still feel it. But yeah, it was definitely come from a place of deep, deep love.
And I think that's the origin of all of us that speak or express on these levels. It is coming from the essence of our love and our truth. And the fact that you've taken so much of yourself and dedicated it towards these beautiful beings, and your YouTube channel, Understanding Sasquatch. My impression of that is this: let's kind of get rid of or bypass all the clutter and the inaccuracies about who these beings are, what they are, and what their purpose is. And you touch more so on this, in my opinion, a very genuine, very deep-hearted understanding, hence the name, and even beyond understanding, knowing that these beings are indeed divine, and they are here for a very profound purpose, and they are incredibly loving. they just have so much energy coming off of them that it is, and because of our programming, it is easy for them to scare us unintentionally. That's not their purpose to do so. If they're trying to scare somebody, then that person has probably maybe brought some bad intent, or had some maybe something that is really contrary to their beliefs and or purpose. But I have had nothing but really, really good experiences, and I've been within feet of several of them, and the energy coming off of them just lit me up, and when I think about it, I still get body rushes of chills from the energies. And it's a beautiful, beautiful feeling, because it's not fearful. The only fear, they're not projecting any fear on me. It's me needing to overcome any programming that I have to break that stigma of these are big, scary, hairy monsters. No, they are some of the most loving beings. The humans are much scarier than the Sasquatch people, because these beautiful beings they generate and emanate and indeed embody pure creator love. And just because they're huge, it's almost it's kind of a strange thing, because you have these beings that maybe they carry so much heart energy, they need that body to house it. I don't know, just a joke, but it's
there's something to that. Our bodies are temples for our spirit, and I think that they have DNA that has semi-divine aspects to it.
I agree.
What happens is that when we get in the presence of divinity, we get in the presence of things that challenge our paradigm, it causes a discomfort for those that are not in alignment with that frequency, because the entire universe is based on frequency. So you get one frequency that's here, you get another frequency that's not of the same frequency, they'll repel each other. This is why people that are not spiritually waking up are going to have a monster experience. They're going to have this, oh my God, what the frick experience. Now, you take someone that's opening their heart, exploring the shamanic understandings, the spiritual development of our human evolution, which is a path that in reality we're all on. Whether you want to be on it or not, we're all on it. And when you start to open up the spiritual understandings, you will resonate with it. Now, this comes from San Manez, who is a Buddhist monk, and he's figured out a template that works for him being in their presence, and he's had as many as 30 of them around him at a single time. And he said that even when he's out doing a sutra or mantra or whatever that is completely loving, all peace, all interconnectedness with the all one, he said sometimes they are so spiritually in tune that it is just, they're always intimidating, even when they're exuding love, because it is kind of like, can you imagine, just take this as a for example, and I want to be careful not to make a comparison that is going to offend anybody. But let's just say an angel. A lot of people have said they've had angel experiences where this divine being is in front of them, and it's this intensity that is associated with that. Whether that is from a high vibration or a low vibration, it's going to be intense. And so I think what it comes down to is that you kind of have to open yourself up to those higher vibrational loving frequencies to be able to have some level of comfort in being in their presence, in understanding some of these unusual experiences that may happen that are associated with them. And again, I just want to say, especially based on what Kat Hansen has told me, just people need to be aware that be careful of just the pure spiritual experiences. This is why I'm really on a track for the corporeal experience, because it is a way for me to give a litmus test to discern what's been going on. I don't want to be deceived. I don't want to be tricked. And I certainly don't want to lead people down the wrong direction. And I don't think that I am. But that's part of why I always give the warning. Hey, the Bible says test all spirits, And for some people, that means different things. For some people, that means different things, testing the spirits, using discernment. For every individual, hey, it's your own path. Use your own level of discernment. That's okay. You don't have to do my way. I don't have to do your way. We just have this amazing opportunity to grow and evolve as spiritual beings. And we have these force people that are wanting to lovingly interface with us. And we are fools to not take advantage of that.
I totally agree with that. It's like what I found is the more that we can connect with these incredible beings, the easier it is to go within and recognize ourselves as being one of those divine beings ourselves. It's like we are not just a body, a personality. There's so much more to us as a whole. Our soul, our spirit, whatever you want to call it. Everybody's got different names. But I find that connecting with these higher dimensionals, and I've had experiences with archangels as well, and many other ETs, and yes, the discernment is really important. If during my meditations, I converse with a lot of different beings, and there are certain beings, and I'm like, if you are indeed who you are, prove it. And I have a certain series of tests, for lack of a better term, that will give me, okay, am I indeed speaking with this being, or is it a trickster? And they do exist. The tricksters do exist. And I have a way of removing the trickster from my, it's like, okay, you're not allowed to be here. Hit the bricks. I'm going to go, talk to whom I really intend to. And discernment is something that's really, really important, especially now during this big shift. And I'm glad you brought that up because, we don't believe everything. As a matter of fact, we're very skeptical of everything. Yes, we've had these really intense experiences, and to the average person, oh, you're crazy. You're making it up. You're just doing it for attention. That's why you have a YouTube channel, blah, blah, blah. But the flip side of that coin is this. We are sharing our experiences with others in the hopes that it'll help. It'll help bring, the consciousness, the level of consciousness of this planet. Let's raise the frequency and keep it up there. It's been that low for too long. And when we talk about, again, the Sasquatch people or Bigfoot, Yeti, a Yahweh, whatever you want to refer to them as, they are these incredible, interdimensional, incredibly spiritually advanced beings. And I'm getting the chills just speaking about them, because on a higher level, they hear what we're saying. They feel our intent. It doesn't have anything to do with our physicality. However, when the energy is returned, it can manifest itself in the form of chills or the whatever way we perceive it. But ultimately, what are we doing? We're trying our best to aid in others to understand, accept, and then go into the knowing that what is the nature of these beings, whether it be extraterrestrials, whether it be the angelics, whether it be, the Sasquatch people. Now, I think what is really, really cool about your approach is, again, the spiritual aspect of it, but you're looking at these beings in a truth that, okay, they have these abilities. They're multidimensional. They can project themselves in physicality. They have amazing abilities. Their telepathy is off the charts. They're so telepathic. And that's why I think that, it's like you get a group of guys that like that show, Killing Bigfoot. I found that extremely offensive because they're part of the unity consciousness. And these people, I'm going to go out and shoot one. They know you're coming long before you know you're coming. You're not going to shoot one. You know, the only way that would ever happen is if they wanted it to happen for whatever reason, you know, and the like people, like you said, you know, the people that are holding that low frequency or aren't really quite in the heart awakening process yet, or haven't, yeah, they're going to see them as a big scary monster. Now, I'm not going to say that the other night, if they had all come out, that it wouldn't have scared me. It totally would have scared me because of my programming and fear frequencies that I'm still working out for myself. But I had all this different telepathy with them, and they were making jokes. I said to Delaki, I said, if you know, I showed him an image. Here's me at 5'10", you know, 190 pounds, and you know, you're 7 foot something, 500 pounds, you come trucking out of the bushes at me, this is what I'm going to see. So I said, you know, show me another way. So I turn around, I take 3 or 4 steps, and right next to me I hear bump, 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 bump. And I turn around, made me jump, you know, and then I can see this smile being projected at me. I'm like, wise ass. He is a wise ass. And I started laughing so hysterically right there. I'm like, I really appreciate that. And it was their humor and their joy. They're not trying to scare me. It's a joke. They're working on, and I asked them, can you please help me with my fear and get over this? And they did. It's just unbelievable. And I, like when you say, you know, I just want you to know I love you. I feel the same way about them, because what are we doing? We're looking directly into unity consciousness. What is unity consciousness? Love. End of story. That's what it is. And we're coming from that place of love. And that's what really made me want to do this interview with you, is because I don't know, I haven't dug into all the different researchers, because there are tons of them, but you're the only one that I have found that is actually approaching these incredible beings. It's not a subject. They're not animals. They are a beautiful race of incredible beings, and you recognize them for that, and you treat them with that respect. And what do? They reciprocate, because you have shown them that respect and that acknowledgement. And you know, from my heart to yours, brother, thank you so much for bringing it to that level and creating your channel, doing all the research you've done. It's just amazing. We're just about out of time. Did you want to touch on anything? And then can you give everybody your information for your channel and what is the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, first I want to say thank you so much, John, for having me on. And thank you for the kind words. I really appreciate it. I do try to apply as much sincerity as I can to this, and it's become a huge part of my life and a very important part of my own spiritual journey right now. And I do hope that the time and effort that I'm putting forward into this is valued, because I offer it freely. Nobody pays for the information that I'm bringing forward. I want it to always be free. And I don't plan on capitalizing financially on acquiring knowledge surrounding the forest people. I want to try to give away that information for free as absolutely as much as I can. And, you know, for the naysayers and for those that are skeptics, I pray that they will advance in their understanding. And for those that make, you know, that are at a place in their lives where they're not spiritually ready for this, that, you know, when they do character attacks and things like that on people like myself or others that are out there, they're attacking an aspect of themselves within their own person. And I just would encourage them to seek within and strive to evolve, because there's a really beautiful people out there that is very willing and thrilled to reach out and communicate with you. And there is a law of reciprocity in the universe. And when we sincerely seek with all of our heart, the universe will answer back, because Jesus Christ said himself, "Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all of these things will be bestowed unto you." Ask, seek, and knock. Don't carry guilt. there's much wisdom that has been on this planet prior to the time that we are here now in this Western civilization that has stepped away from these ancient traditions. And there is no reason to carry shame, to be embarrassed, or to have guilt for wanting to reach out. And so my YouTube channel is simply Understanding Sasquatch. Go there, please subscribe. I do have a Patreon. I don't harp on it. If people want to assist me on the journey, you know, proceeds will eventually help me to go make visitation to people like my friend John here, because I would love to go to East Eddy Ranch and you know, I'm going to go spend some time with Kat a week later this year. I want to go spend time with David Ingalls and help him write a book collaboratively together. I want to go spend time in North Carolina and visit Christopher S. Jacobs, and I want to go spend time in New York with Son Monez. And there's a lot of things I want to do that I could really use the help. So if you want to go to patreon.com/Understanding Sasquatch, you can assist me there as well. But I would also like to say, if you cannot afford to make a donation to anybody that does any kind of work like this, don't do it. Give if you can afford to give. If you feel like it's something that you're connected with, please give. But if not, you know, don't carry guilt. Don't feel bad. And if you can assist in the spiritual evolution of humankind, get in there. You know, support the people that are out on the front lines if this is important to you. And if it's not, then don't. So that's really all I wanted to say. And I just thank you again for having me on.
Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experiences. This is a really unique interview for my channel, because it's a departure from many of the other interviews that I've done so far. And again, I wanted to really just stress that it's all connected. It's all part of the same consciousness. And that's what really, I just love this type of thing, because it's a very good demonstration of how everything is connected. So on that note, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. Keegan, my brother, thank you again.
God bless you all.